The hell you ride or something.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hey,
There you go.
Okay, now I gotta do it the other way though.
Carmen, can you hear me?
Can you hear us, Janet?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome.
Okay.
Woo.
We're good. YouTube. Yeah. Smarter than the equipment. That's why. That's why. Okay, yeah. There you go.
we'll call it missions. How many times have you had to set up Not, I'm glad you asked. Well,
but the main thing.
I don't know whether that's good or bad. I was gonna try to do flyer, but I just not even.
Same thought, microwave.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Ring the rocks.
All right, friends. Thank you for coming. I apologize we're a little late. We had kind of a, I will say, emergency meeting. The federal government is closed, as you know, and the first big hit for us is the discontinuation or maybe pause. We don't know exactly. Just I'll say pause in SNAP benefits being sent out. That will start in as early as November, and we have 170 households in the county that make use of SNAP benefits. So we're trying to get our heads around what that impact will be and what the county can do to support local food banks primarily, which will take the hit. So we had a meeting about that. And I apologize that it ran a little bit late. But I guess I should call the meeting to order. Sorry, I don't have a formal agenda in front of me. Hello, it is 4:13 on Wednesday, October 22nd. There's one. And this is a work session of the Board of County Commissioners, San Miguel County. Present in the room are all three commissioners. We have a number of staff. We also have online staff as well as members of representatives of CDOT, which we're super excited to have here. That was kind of a thought that came up in our last meeting that it would be helpful to have them here because a lot of the issues we discussed, or many, are related to the highway. So we're super happy to have Tim here and his associate. That's the roll call. And now we have our moment of silence for grounding and gratitude. Thank you. I needed to catch my breath, so appreciate that. Agenda is pretty straightforward. We have public comment for items not on the agenda, but as you know, a big chunk of this is not agendized. It's just hearing from you all about your concerns and compliments. So anything that is unrelated to Placerville or Down Valley that anybody wants to talk about, that's first. And then, as I said, we'll start with CDOT. The county has prepared a list of topics that have been addressed by this community previously that we want to give you some updates on. But as that goes on, you know, we can have questions and then we'll just have free form at the end for topics that we don't know are on your mind. Anybody have any changes to the agenda? Are we ready to go?
Letterbuck.
Letterbuck, okay. So public comments for items not on the agenda. Please limit comments to 3 minutes. If comments are not related to an item on the agenda, there will be no board response or action taken since the topic was not posted with proper notice, and any comment could potentially violate the Colorado Open Meetings Law. Is there anyone who wants to talk about an issue that is not related to the Valley, Down Valley? And I am not online, but is anyone raising their hand online? No. No, okay. Public comment is now closed. And we will move on to our conversation with Tim Funk and Tony Cady of the Colorado Department of Transportation. Gentlemen, would you like to begin with kind of an update and a review of the topics that we mentioned might be of interest? And then we can take comments and questions from the room. Does that make sense?
Sure.
All right. Who's gonna lead this? We can maybe pin you.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think Tony and I are both here unmuted. I've got it just as a warning. I've got another meeting. I got to leave in about 15 minutes, but Tony is more versed on a lot of these issues than I am anyway. And he'll be able to stay longer, but let's see. The first topic that you guys wanted to bring up was just big picture stuff with our funding, hiring freeze. I believe we are still in a hiring freeze. Tony, is that correct?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, so the state is in a hiring freeze. As far as our, federal funding, Nothing is slowing up what we're currently working on, what we currently have in our queue. I think where counties, municipalities could see some issues are with local grant programs. For instance, the Federal Lands Access Program that has been postponed twice already might get postponed again. And this was before the shutdown, there was a website that let counties and municipalities track NOFOs, a notice of funding opportunity for programs under the last infrastructure bill. That webpage was taken down before the closure. So a lot of those programs, we don't know if or when they're going to be back up and running. But on the state side, we still have our base funds for assets in the region. There is less money for strategic projects than we had anticipated a few years ago. We presented the 10-year plan at the last Gunnison Valley TPR meeting of the projects we were doing in Region 5. And a couple other programs were hit due to the state funding shortages. The MMOF program had some money taken from it. There was still enough to award some projects. Let's see, unfortunately though, a award for a planning grant to Telluride had to be rescinded by the TPR due to lack of funds. And the Revitalizing Main Streets program, another state program that cities could go to for it was up to $250,000. It wasn't for huge projects, but that is also on a temporary hiatus. I don't think any of that information is new since we met with you guys last. So let's see, maybe I'll turn it over to Tony for the next one, which is the number of access points off Highway 145 on Front Street. Tony, were you able to get some info from our traffic unit on that?
David didn't have any updates. I think the latest conversation was with either the county or the town and our right-of-way folks about CDOT's willingness to relinquish our ownership of the frontage road. And it sounds like we are willing to do that. I think we're looking for the town to handle the survey end of things, to document the right-of-way so that we can file a quick claim deed and absolve ourselves of the ownership of that right-of-way.
Tony, how much of Front Street is that? Because my understanding is that because of Highway 145, you've got many feet on either side that you would probably retain. Is that right?
Well, we would retain, we typically retain 50 feet off the white line. In this particular case, we would not, because that would extend out into the frontage road. So we would define an appropriate area for roadside maintenance, a ditch, basically, buffer zone between the edge of oil and your guys' right of way. And, I'm not familiar with where they've drawn that line yet, but we would make sure that it's agreeable to both parties. And then that way, I believe the issue is the number of accesses. You guys would own that, and you could consolidate the accesses to one or two locations.
Sorry, yes. Lynn Black has a question.
So does that mean that you're willing to quit claim the portion that runs under the schoolhouse also?
I don't know about that. I'm not sure if that's been a part of the conversation or not, but I can find out and get back to you.
Thank you.
Is Janet on the line? Would you know anything about that?
Hi, Commissioner Brown. Yeah, Tony, I was just going to jump in here and ask, if your comments just now stem from the email thread that I had with David Payton and Commissioner Brown. This all stemmed from the initial beautification improvements that we had discussed along the Front Street area. You know, I have been working with Maura, our county attorney, and Heather, our GIS director, along with Dave Foley, our county surveyor, just in trying to better understand how the ownership breaks out within that area with the ROW between CDOT, the county, and the Placerville Trust. So there has been a recent email thread, like last week, that recent, where David looped in Tony and Tim and a few others on the CDOT end, which mentioned that they would be willing to relinquish their ownership within the CDOT right of way along the Front Street area. But, you know, this, as I mentioned internally with Maura and Heather, and I think I said it to David Payton as well, you know, that this is a larger conversation that obviously we would need to engage with our county manager, Mike Bordonia, who is currently out of town, and obviously the county commissioners. So, you know, it's a recent discussion, but, you know, it hasn't gone anywhere because again, you know, this needs to be discussed with Mike when he returns next week. And, you know, and then I also wanted to chat obviously with Ryan Rigetti, our road and bridge superintendent, to discuss long-term maintenance and just what that would mean for the county overall if we were to take on this ownership. Because obviously there's a bigger picture there.
I have another question, Tony. If it didn't make sense for the county to take on the ownership of that full Front Street, could you talk to us about how we might adjust those access points in that scenario?
Yeah, I mean, it is in our best interest to consolidate access as much as we possibly can. So there is an opportunity for us to do that outside of any changing of ownership. We would do an access control plan, which is an engineered study showing the best location for the access points, the safest locations with the best line of sight. And then I'm not sure how we would remove the access points and what kind of barriers we would put up to prevent folks in the short term from using those just out of force of habit. But that could probably be something that would be wrapped into the larger 10-year plan strategic project, the 145 multimodal project, which has some improvements planned for Placerville. And we could probably figure out a way to get rid of some of those multiple access points along that road.
That's encouraging. All right. Thank you. Does anyone from the public want to comment on yeah, Fletcher, on that topic of the access points?
Scott up here.
I'm sorry, Scott. I'm sorry, you're sitting with Kathy.
Yeah.
Sorry.
145 project that you just mentioned, Tony, is that set to be implemented at a certain time or date?
Yeah, we have funding in the 10-year plan. The 10-year plan is strategic dollars that were given to CDOT through Senate Bill 260, which is implementation of fees on different activities on the roadway, which provided the DOT with extra funding to tackle some strategic needs that were identified in collaboration with the transportation planning regions. And one of the projects that was identified by the Gunnison Valley TPR were improvements in Placerville, Saw Pit, and Norwood, multimodal, so sidewalks, potentially curb and gutter, ADA crossings, things that would help with also transit, accessing transit stops in those communities. That is fully funded. We are working on the design right now. We did just get a contract underway for survey to complete the topographic portion of that so they can finalize the design. And I think they're planning on going to construction in 2027. Tim, is that right?
I think that's right. Yeah, they've started survey now. Once survey's done, then design. So that's what'll happen in 26 and then hopefully construction 27.
And does that transit section include bicycle access pathways? Are you into that effect?
I don't think they've settled on the full plan for what's going to happen in Placerville. But I think it'll probably be limited to to some sidewalks and some crossings and not necessarily dedicated bike lanes.
Is there any opportunity for some community engagement through that process to get feedback from the community here?
Sure.
Yeah, we'd love, I know that our engineers have met with Mike, they've met with the county several times, and we'd like as much guidance or feedback from the community as we can get.
How would we make that happen?
Let me get with the project team. There was a site walk that happened with county staff somewhat recently.
Yeah, so
To try to
month
get
ago, maybe.
feedback from the county on what they wanted to see happen out there.
Yeah, yeah, no, Tim, I was just going to chime in that Commissioner Brown, last June, Ryan Rigetti, myself, and John Hubner from our planning department met with CDOT representatives at the Sawpit communities and the Placerville communities to discuss various components to this project, be it, as Tim and Tony mentioned, you know, curb cuts, sidewalks, and just overall improvements for safety and otherwise. That tie in with the bus stops, and then anything that might tie in with potential future trails. But we've just, you know, haven't seen any draft recommendations yet, but those were the preliminary conversations this past summer.
Okay, so you've already had some community input in June of this year?
Well, it was at the staff level. We haven't engaged with the community except for in Sawpit. The mayor of Sawpit attended, along with a couple of community representatives, but you know, it was sort of under the radar with county staff at that time, you know, with a staffing level. So we haven't engaged with the full community yet because, you know, again, it was just preliminary conversations and discussion, and we haven't seen any
Okay.
proposals because they were still seeking funding, but it's good to hear that the funding is secure.
Yeah, it is funded. So I think probably maybe the best solution.
Oh, sorry, we have a question from the public.
Okay.
Jeannie?
Janet, regarding your project that you've been working with the community on, the beautification of Placerville, is this part of this? I think we're getting.
No, you're.
Oh,
fine.
so then,
I just need to
okay,
put some stuff.
I'm just wondering if these two projects are working side by side right now, or are they two separate projects? I'm a little confused.
Well, no, thanks, Jeannie. They're two separate projects, but they sort of complement each other. So whereas we, you know, so CDOT, they started their preliminary conversations first as far as the improvements to the areas from a safety standpoint with sidewalks and curb cuts, et cetera. You know, the beautification aspect that came about with our consultants tied in with the EPA grant. And then that's when we got into further discussion with CDOT as far as right-of-way ownership, you know, as far as how that broke out between the county, CDOT, and then the Placerville Trust. So it's sort of, you know, they're kind of dovetailing into each other, but they're two separate projects, but I guess running simultaneously,
Okay, thank you.
if that makes sense.
Okay, so we haven't yet had community input down in Placerville. We have, it sounds like, in Sawpit. So I think, Janet, perhaps you could work with Tony and Tim to figure out another kind of session for
Sure.
people to see preliminary designs. Tony, would there be preliminary designs as opposed to final designs that the community could review?
Yeah, I think we would want to wait. That's what I was going to suggest, is wait until we have something on paper to
Yeah.
comment on. And I don't think we're at that stage yet. So we'll just coordinate with Janet. I'll get a schedule from David Payton's group, is the one who's designing that project, figure out when that will be, when we'll actually have something on paper for you guys to take a look at. And then we'll set up a meeting with the community, have some boards out that people can take a look at proposed designs and maybe provide some comments at that point.
Thanks so much, Tony. And
Yeah.
maybe Janet, at that meeting, you could also kind of update people on the beautification plan and how they work together, because obviously there's a lot of overlap. Mark?
Sure.
Yes, my question is, you're kind of putting the cart before the horse here. If you haven't defined the boundaries, how are you gonna define who is responsible for what part of the project they're gonna financially support? And if CDOT can step out and say, okay, you can have it all, does that then make the county responsible for all the design and the financial to take care of it, any safety or improvements that are needed?
No, so the improvements that would be paid for with the strategic funding, those will be conducted regardless of who owns the property. We would probably have an agreement with the community as far as who maintains it in the long term, but typically that falls on the community anyways with curb authority. When CDOT installs curb, gutter, and sidewalk, it's typically up to the local jurisdiction to maintain those, unless a alternative agreement is in place. But the strategic funds are set in place and the project will move forward regardless of who owns it, unless the community says that they just didn't want it.
That was a great question. Okay,
Well, that became the issue on Highway 62 and intersection 145 as who was responsible for the creek and the bridge and the other issues. And even though the project was done in 2012, I think it was, a lot of the paperwork and the claims as to who was responsible for maintenance of that area down there on Leopard Creek got pushed off and finally got recorded here a couple of years ago.
thank you for that history. We'll make sure that that
Please
is
do.
tied up well before any right of way is exchanged or the plan is finalized. All right, just in the interest of time, I think we should move on to the next item. Tony, thank you so much.
Yeah, so I think this one's more for you guys. It's whether residents still feel the need for a speed study after radar activated speed signs have been installed. And I did check with our traffic folks. We have not received a request to conduct a speed study. So I guess the conversation is, do we want a speed study on 145 near Placerville?
Hang on one second. Yeah, I actually thought that had been requested as well. And understood, was updated by staff that we were waiting to hear how those radar speed control signs were helping in front of Front Street, recognizing that that's only a portion of the valley. But the commissioners were in favor, the last time we spoke about it, of conducting a speed study. We recognize that, and what that does is it kind of studies how people are actually, what they are traveling and whether that's safe. And then there's a possibility that speed limits could go up as well as go down. I think it's highly unlikely, we had this discussion, that they would go up. And so we had agreed that we thought it was a good idea, but since it hasn't been decided yet, we just wanted to throw it out there for community input.
And yeah, we will conduct one if requested, I guess.
All right, well, Tony, let me just clarify though, because my understanding from David Payton is that whatever you guys track during the speed study, actual speed, that is what then gets implemented. So even though it might be posted at 30 or 40, if you're clocking vehicles at 50 or 60, then that's what happens. That, you know, that speed automatically gets increased and then that signage changes to reflect that increased speed. So isn't there somewhat of a risk in conducting a speed study with the numbers going up?
Yeah, there is. It's generally the 80th percentile of speed. So they do a study, they determine what the above normal speed of the vehicle is, and then that is the appropriate speed limit. So there is a concern that it could go up.
I'm sorry, I don't understand that. Can you say that one more time, Tony? So you track how, and we'll find out, Scott, in a minute, how the tracking takes place, but you're saying the 80th percentile of the highest or the lowest moving car?
Of all the speeds, the 80th percentile, right? So if it's 80th percentile is below the speed limit, it'll lower the speed limit. If the 80th percentile is above the speed limit, then the speed limit will increase.
So I have a question about I am quite certain that the community would not like to see the speed limit increase. We've gotten a lot of comments and concerns that vehicles are moving way too fast through this corridor of 145, and it's quite dangerous for residents. And so what would the proper course of action be to trigger speed reduction?
Good question.
I think a speed study.
Right, but if people are
Yeah.
not complying with the speed limit and it's already known that they're driving too fast through this corridor for safety, it sounds like a speed study could
Right.
result in a faster speed limit, which is certainly what we do not want.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only way that we found that speed gets lowered is through increased enforcement. And that's either through CSP or local law enforcement, increasing the amount of tickets that are distributed in an area. But that's, it's usually a short-term fix as well. So
lowering the speed limit, like changing the number on the sign, does not lower speeds?
we can't just change the speed limit without doing a speed study. If we change the speed limit artificially low, it's against state statute, right? So we engineer a roadway and then we determine what the appropriate speed is, and then we set that speed limit.
So
We can't
yeah.
then go back and just change it.
All right, so we'll get the sheriff out here monitoring speeds, and then we'll request a speed study. Scott Upshur.
Just follow up, our accident data accounted for in those speed studies. We've had 2 accidents, major accidents in the last month. Right out front here, are those accounted for in these speed studies?
They are, yeah.
And how do they affect the speed studies if it's seen that there are multiple accidents in that area?
I'm not an expert in speed studies. David Payton would be the one to ask that, but I do know it's an influencing factor. We could get back to you with exactly how that factors into the overall assessment of an appropriate speed.
Thank you. And Scott, you had another question I don't think got addressed about how is the data collected, or what was your question?
This is all kind of adding up to that.
Okay. Steve Keen?
Yeah, so you talk about safety and sidewalks and things like that, but I haven't heard anything about safety as it relates to the number and the density of access points that are along this corridor. And while I'm on that topic, it's currently 45 miles an hour throughout the corridor, and that includes Fall Creek subdivision all the way through Placerville. However, I'm on the first access point on the south side of Fall Creek subdivision, services 3 homes. That does not include, I'm still in a 50-mile-an-hour zone, technically. The sign doesn't happen until after my driveway. So those 3 homes and those at that access point weren't included in that 45-minute or 45-mile-per-hour stretch. And I think they should be. I mean, if the idea is to cover all the access points in Fall Creek through Placerville, then that needs to be picked up as well. So that sign should be moved a little further south to slow traffic before it gets to that first access point. I'd like to make that request.
Does that work? Someone asks and you can move it, or does that require a speed study as well?
No, I don't think so. I think if that request gets submitted to our traffic and safety folks, they would take a look at it and likely move that if it's a short distance.
Tony, can we make this a formal submission, or do we need to submit an email to the folks that you just mentioned?
I would need to write down the specifics.
Please
Okay.
do.
Well, why don't
I can
we,
follow it.
yeah, why don't we follow up? We'll give Steve your email address. Is that okay?
Sure, yeah.
And then, of course, that was a 2-part kind of question or comment. First part goes back to the safety side of all those accidents and the density of the access points throughout the corridor. Is that being taken into consideration in these speed studies and the ultimate determination?
No, I don't believe so. I believe it is mostly just traffic, volumes and accident rates.
So people misbehaving by driving way too fast because it's gotten really intense around here is going to dictate what the residents have to deal with
Yeah.
in terms of noise and safety?
Yeah, unfortunately, I do know that the methodologies for conducting speed studies has changed just this last year, and it allows some flexibility for the traffic engineer to use other ancillary factors in a determination of appropriate speed. Whereas before it was literally only the speed in the accidents drove the decision for what the appropriate posted speed should be. Now there are some more extenuating circumstances that can be applied to a decision that's made. And like I said, I'm not super familiar with what those are, but I can define those specifically for you all and get back to you with that information so you can make an informed decision about whether you would like to have a speed study done or not. As far as the number of access points goes, CDOT is legally required to provide existing access points with access to the highway. The county would need to approach CDOT with a request to do an access control plan to reduce the number of access points and consolidate those. I'm not sure how feasible that is in your community just because of the constrained nature. Typically, we would need to install frontage roads to consolidate accesses to several, to just key points along a corridor. But there may be other solutions that our traffic and safety folks could envision through that access control plan. So something to think about with David Payton and Jen Allison's group, and I can bring that up to them and see if they have any potential ideas that would not involve, the creation of frontage roads, which are probably infeasible in that area.
Is that something that's of interest to the community, is reducing, I guess what we're talking about is consolidating driveways, right?
Well, I don't have any room. I
Yeah.
don't know if my math is bad, but every time you reduce access points, you can increase congestion. So if there's 2 access points to the front street, then you're increasing congestion on those 2 points by 50%. And that doesn't seem to make sense.
Okay,
It-
Lance,
it-
did you
it-
comment?
I
Go
was
ahead.
just going to comment. It is a toss up. You do increase congestion, but you do improve safety. So it depends on each scenario. You have to assess what the greater needs are in that area.
Okay. Scott,
One other question, do the speed studies take into account if we were to request more presence from the sheriff's department, hopefully enforcing the current speed limit? Will the speed study account for that presence of an officer?
It does not. And kind of underhandedly, we would provide a window of when our consultant would come out and conduct that speed study. And if it so happened that increased law enforcement happened at that exact same time, that coincidence would not be documented in the overall report.
so it sounds like there is some, that it's not quite as straightforward or exclusively about that 80th percentile, that there is some subjective thought that goes into this. Does that change anybody's interest in this study, or do we still, Jared?
I was just gonna suggest, Commissioner Brown, I think what they are saying is these arbitrary ways to move that 80th percentile, be it law enforcement presence or otherwise, right?
AI.
They're still going to be governed by that 80th percentile threshold. So they have some creative ways that they might suggest, or at least let us on, that to influence that. But when the speed study were to occur, whatever the results are what would govern the speed limits that would be set. Is that accurate, Tony?
Yeah.
I thought you
And I
said
know,
there was now some flexibility to consider ancillary factors.
right. And that would, I think that's what he was trying to say, is there are creative ways to influence the weight of the 80th percentile in setting that speed limit. I know we used to do informal speed studies not the formalized. Once we stamp that document, that's going to change the speed limit. We used to do these informal speed studies, which would give a community an indication of what it would likely turn out to be. I don't know if we still do those or not, and I will talk to Jen's group about that, our traffic and safety group, to see if we could do something like that in your area, to see if it would lower or raise the speed limit. And obviously, if it's going to raise the speed limit, we don't want to do a formal one.
Okay, I think we could make that request right now.
Yeah,
That's still available?
I will check on that.
Thank you so much. Okay, one last question about the speed study.
Am I to assume that these speed studies are basically those little strips that are like just time markers on the street, or do they have, do they put someone out? How do you actually collect the data?
Yeah, it is those, they're called tubes. It is the tubes, and they basically just record vehicles driving over them, and it's a pair, right? And it documents the speed as well, how quickly they pass through the pair of tubes. So they would lay those out there. We can't control when exactly they do it. They lay those out there, they let them operate for, let's say, a month, and then they use that data. Somehow they factor in whether that's, seasonal peaks. They factor in some kind of local traffic patterns as well to make a determination of kind of what the annual traffic rate is in that area.
Okay, I think you guys want to weigh in on the speed study? We just requested the informal speed study to get a sense of whether it's going to go up or down.
It depends a lot on where they put those tubes. If you put those tubes right
Right.
before somebody's pulling up, it makes it sound like somebody's going 10 miles an hour. You put it further up the valley, of course, it's gonna be higher.
Well, I imagine you would do it in several locations using.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And they probably have some experience about where the best place to put it is. Yeah, okay. All right.
Yes.
The only thing is, you guys, we're going to be here all night if we keep talking about this. We could potentially, I'll just ask you to quickly, Matt, please share your view.
I think this study is nearsighted and just look towards the long term in terms of like, what do we want? Do we want to slow people down? How do we do that safely, regardless of the number on.
There is the issue right there.
Well, I think we've heard it's enforcement, and that's something we can absolutely talk about with the sheriff. Bob.
I just want to include the 62 corridor coming from Ridgeway and from Norwood. I also wanted to add in the possibility of jet brake signs coming from all three directions.
Yeah.
Would be huge.
You can't restrict it.
Mark, please. Yeah.
Everybody is pretty affected by this noise factor. You have a study.
You know what, can we just hold that until we get through the speed study, and then we'll come back? I've made a note of that. Last comment, Scott, on the speed study?
I was just gonna point out that even the preliminary would be not being very effective unless we had the sheriff's department involved, so that.
Good point. So if you could get back to us, Tony, about that informal study, and we could kind of coordinate when and how that's going to happen, that would be great. There was also a comment, I don't know if you heard it from the back row, about including Highway 62 from Placerville to Dallas Divide. And then as well, this is the first I've heard of speed issues from Placerville to the bottom of Norwood Hill from this group. Is that also a significant concern? Because now we're asking for a lot of miles here.
I will say there was a comment made about that in the last Placerville listening session.
Oh,
Yep.
about that.
About that corridor. Yeah.
Okay, so that's a lot of miles. Is it possible to make a request for those 3 road segments?
I will check with our folks.
Okay. All right, thank you. And I'm sorry to be the school marm here, but we're only on the 3rd point of about 15 or 20 that we had wanted to bring people up to speed and get comments on. So the next one was something about which we had a note today. The need, take it away, CDOT, you've got the list. And then we'll get back.
It's better signage coming out of the eastbound curves before Juniper Village Lane. I did communicate with Jen about whether they had received a request from the county about this issue, and they were not familiar with it, but she did send me a reply back. They did take a look at it. And they will take a look at whether we could add some increased signage to warn motorists that there's vehicles turning onto the highway at that location. So we will take a look at that.
Okay, Lance?
Tony, can I insert a comment from a resident up on M44 Road, which is on the way to Norwood? And
Okay.
request the same consideration, the same inspection, and the same possible remedy.
You can.
Thank you.
I'm writing it down.
Was there a specific direction or will it be obvious?
I think that it was both directions, and it's simply that the turnoff is a little obscured, and when residents of Spisa Mesa are making that turn up to cross the river, that the traffic tends to get up real close behind them, so it might be good to alert them that there is possibility of vehicles turning.
Okay.
Thank you.
Dave, did that address your question? Do you,
Yes.
thank you. Okay, terrific. Carry on.
Next is looking at what we're doing for Bustang Outrider bus stop improvements. And I'm assuming we're specifically talking about the Placerville bus stop. We are
Is there
doing,
another one in the valley, or is that the only one down here?
that is, well, there's one in Ridgeway.
And Fall Creek Road.
And Fall Creek Road, someone thinks?
There's stops, but not a.
This is the
not
bus
all
stand.
Mustangs.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
smart. But
Okay, yeah, okay, then we'll just say one bus stop.
Okay, so it is all tied into Front Street, right? The Bustang stop in Placerville is on the frontage road at Front Street. It's near where Smart stops, but it's not consolidated. So as part of the entire plan and the beautification improvements that are planned there, we would like to tie it all together, and we would like to consolidate the two stops into one stop, potentially lit unless it's an issue with dark sky compliance. But they are working on the design for the Placerville location right now. And when they have something on paper, I will send that to the community for review.
Right, maybe we could make that part of the grand community meeting we're gonna be having about input on the design in this neighborhood. Does that make sense?
Well, I think it's a timing issue. So if it's going to happen quicker, I'll get you the information before that.
Okay,
But they all should, I agree, they all should tie together. So we'll do the best that we can to ensure that that happens.
thank you.
All right, are we good there?
Looks like it.
Okay, so the next one is about rockfall mitigation on Norwood Hill and Keystone. And I do have an update. We do have, so we have a geohazard program within the department. It's run out of our headquarters group in Denver. And they do statewide assessments to determine needs throughout the entire state. They have identified both Norwood and Keystone Hill as concerns. And then they looked at which one they could accomplish improvements on first. And they selected Norwood Hill as the first project to complete in Southwest Colorado. The reason why they did that is Keystone Hill has such a huge slope that we would need to chase right away. We would need to get access permits, easements, and it would just it'd probably take an extra year to get that one implemented. So they have kicked off the design for improvements on Norwood Hill, and they're going to do rock scaling and drape mesh at 4 different locations along Norwood Hill that should hopefully resolve all the issues on that corridor. The design has started right now. I was at a scoping meeting for that one 2 days ago. And the funding that's available for that project is fiscal year 27-28 funding. So the construction would happen in calendar year 2027. Immediately after that, they will begin working on right-of-way and environmental reviews for the Keystone Hill project. So it's out there a ways, but there are plans to make those improvements.
I have a question about Norwood Hill. As far as guardrails, there's a pretty good section of that road that there's no guardrail, and it's certainly a hazard. Would that be taken into consideration with this project, or just rockfall mitigation? Just
rockfall. They're different pots of money run by different groups, but I could have Jen look at guardrail needs on Norwood Hill as well. So
that would be great if you could look into that. It's near the top of the hill, and yeah, have her take a look at that piece of highway. Thank you.
Yep.
Great news, by the way.
Yeah, and it might be a little tricky. I don't know if you guys were here and kind of keeping tabs on the last rockfall project they did on Norwood Hill, but they pulled an intact brontosaurus leg bone out of the middle of Norwood Hill, and they took it up to the Dinosaur Museum in Grand Junction. So they are anticipating some paleontological discoveries, and it's going to cost a little extra because we have to have a paleo monitor out there while we do that work. But it's always something.
Scott, did you have a question about Norwood Hill?
Can I request that we build our own dinosaur museum?
Yes.
Sure.
Or that maybe get donated to the Tyrride Historic Museum. I would say dinosaur bones are historic to our region. That was a sincere request from me. Okay, let's move on then to the Deep Creek Joint Housing Project. And I can just provide a little bit of information about that. I don't know how up to date you all are about the 3 different housing projects that are on kind of the long-term plan for the county, but one of them is housing down by the Deep Creek Road and Bridge Shop, where both CDOT and the county have facilities. The idea would be to consolidate those facilities and free up a little bit more land so we could put in some housing that would specifically be designated for road and bridge workers to reside on the east end of San Miguel County. Currently, we have maybe 1 person, I can't remember exactly, Ryan, 2 people from our department living on the east end. And as you know, there is nobody who offices out of the Deep Creek area road CDOT office. And so the idea is to provide some housing that would be first come, first served for them to try to address that problem. Is there anything else we wanted to talk about that right now? Mention about that? No, just.
I think you covered it well.
Yep, that we do have a design contract that's about to be signed, and then we'll be sending out an RFP for design services. The other thing that has already been mentioned by this group is a request for Jake Break management and are you talking, which area are you speaking of, Bob?
I would say somewhere by, I don't know, Brown Ranch area, somewhere on the other side of Lower Placerville, and probably somewhere up by coming into Salthead.
So catching the residential areas that.
Catching the 3 points coming in here.
What's the
Placerville, yeah.
And yeah, what's the process on that, Tony?
Well, so I recorded the locations, and I have the request. I believe we have to investigate whether there is a noise ordinance in place in the communities that are requesting the signs. And if there is, and it's enforceable, we can install the signs. If there's not, we would encourage you to pass a noise ordinance so that we can control the roadway noise.
We do have a noise ordinance. Maura, do you want to speak to that?
Can't remember off the top of my head what it
Covers?
says.
It's a
But we do have
decibel.
one. Yeah, I just don't want to.
Yeah. We'll work with you guys and look into it. And if feasible, so I have 3 locations around Brown Ranch, Lower Placerville, and Saw Pit, those communities. So We could talk more specifics after we've determined that the noise ordinance would allow us to install those signs.
Yep.
And then we could define the exact locations where they would provide the best benefit.
Okay, we will have our County Attorney Maura Fahey share our noise ordinance with you. And the
Okay,
good news is we just updated it. And as I recall, we made it, it had originally been sort of specific to some geographic areas and we made it countywide. So if my memory is correct, then we have what we need for that. Jeannie Stewart.
I would like to suggest one more area, for a sign is, just east of Placerville, right after the curves. Coming into Placerville, there's often Jake Bridge even that goes on before, and then just cruises right through Placerville.
So, yeah, so I guess it is a pretty long stretch from upriver Saw Pit all the way down here. So it would be, it's a request for another one closer to the town of Placerville.
Sure.
Mark?
I got two comments. First of all, if you could add the intersection of 62 and 145 into a desire to have the noise reduction occur there also. But I have found, and I wanted to ask you, have you found historically that when you put up signs restricting use of safety equipment on a vehicle, that sometimes the operators become more critical of their use of those devices? And are you capable of reducing the safety devices on a piece of moving equipment that's required for noise? Is it that with Jake brakes?
yeah, I can't answer that question. I don't know. I'm sure our traffic and safety groups knows how effective the implementation of signage is on whether people use those brakes or not. I do know that sign pollution is what we're calling it, kind of lowers the efficacy of the message. So if you've got 20 deer signs on a roadway, it just turns into background noise and people stop paying attention to whether deer are on the road. If we have 20 Jake brake signs on the road, they'll probably stop paying attention or be less concerned, as opposed to strategically locating those. So there will be some thought into the placement of those and the number of those, just so that we're not kind of inundating folks with information that just eventually gets ignored. As far as, how well they work, I just don't know. And it's probably a enforcement issue as well, right? If they know it's going to be enforced, they're more likely to comply with the mandate to not use Jake brakes.
Lynn Black.
So if my memory is correct, many years ago, we asked for a prohibition of Jake brakes just uphill from Fall Creek Road. And there was a sign there that said noise. It was a noise reduction because we couldn't ban the use of Jake brakes for that stretch. I've noticed over the last year or so, a lot more Jake brake activity in that area. And I don't know if the sign is still up and it's being ignored because I don't see it when I drive, but I'm immune to the signs at this point too. But I've noticed quite a bit more Jake brake usage in that area also.
Okay, which is part of the corridors that we're speaking of here.
Right.
Yeah, no, and Lynn, I was gonna say, because Lynn and I live on the same road. Lynn, sometimes the sign disappears. I think people steal it because it's like the screaming man sign. They think it's art. I always contact CDOT and it's typically replaced right away. But I think some of the drivers, the truck drivers, are vindictive when they see it. And, I think they're more like, oh yeah, you don't want to hear it, because I hear it at my home and I think they see that and they just go gangbusters to make it noisier than it should be. But just my thought, but we do hear it in the neighborhood.
Let's give it a try. Thank you, Tony. That is the end of the list of topics that the commissioners and staff had pulled together that we thought would be particularly CDOT related and of interest to the community. But while we have them here, of course, we'd like to hear, or they would like to hear, as would the commissioners, anything else related to the highways. Lynn.
any change to the snow plowing?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Scott?
How do we get more bicycle access on the highway when planning is happening? How do we advocate for that?
Well, I think you guys have done a pretty good job. There's several corridor-wide trail projects that have been identified on your TPR priority list. They're not currently funded, but I know like the Down Valley Connector Trail is probably the best solution for bike access on the 145 corridor between Leopard Creek and Telluride, right? That the constrained nature of the roadway is not going to lend itself for us building 10-foot shoulders on either side of the roadway. So it'll need to be a separated path, and it'll probably need to be on the old railroad grade or the Galloping Goose grade. So I think you've done a pretty good job. You know, the prioritization efforts for the long range transportation plan really need to start focusing on, and it's hard, it's competing interests, spending our, you know, limited strategic dollars on bike and ped facilities versus safety improvements. It becomes a tough conversation to have, but in the next round, if those get prioritized as some of the highest priorities in Gunnison Valley, then they'll get funded.
Thank you. One last question, Scott?
Is there something short of 10-foot shoulders, like just regular 4-foot shoulders or 3-foot shoulders?
Yeah, there are variances for mountainous corridors, but even a 4 to 6 foot shoulder in that area in many locations is just going to be really tough to do. So, yeah, I mean, we will try to extend the shoulders as much as we can when we're doing paving or improvement projects along the corridor, but getting a unified 6 foot shoulder between Telluride and Placerville is going to be pretty tough to get, I think.
Anything else for CDOT? Mark?
I'm curious, is currently any program going on with Colorado State Wildlife and CDOT regarding the roadkill in this area?
We do have a group that's been formed. It's called the Colorado Wildlife and Transportation Alliance, and it's made up of members of CDOT and CPW staff looking at wildlife vehicle collision reduction measures throughout the state. You know, my area is on the western part of the state, so in 2019 we conducted a study, and it's called the West Slope Wildlife Prioritization Study, and it prioritizes the locations in the greatest need for mitigation for wildlife vehicle collisions. And we've been working on those locations. You guys have seen the wildlife underpasses by Kelowna and just north of Ridgeway. Those came directly as a result of this study. So we are working with them. There are areas that lend themselves better and cheaper for building crossing structures, and that makes them kind of easier to fund. But we are working our way down the list of the highest needs to the lowest needs. I'm not sure if there are any we're working on the top 5% of the worst locations right now, and I'm not sure if there are any top 5% locations in your area. That study is online, but I can take a look at the Gunnison Valley, and I can send you a map kind of blown up showing the locations of greatest concern in San Miguel County.
Thank you, that's great.
That would be
Yeah.
great. And then maybe we'll have some kind of a follow-up email to the Down Valley community. Thank you so much, Tony.
You're welcome. Yeah.
We're giving you a month's worth of work here in an hour and 10 minutes.
All right. Tim will help me.
Okay. All right, great. Well, we really appreciate your being here. I have felt a little bit at sea at other meetings down here because there are so many questions for CDOT, and having you here so people can hear it right from you and you can take our input directly is outstanding. Thank you so much to you and Tim.
Yeah, thanks for inviting us, and feel free to invite us again in the future. And we will get back to you with the information that we talked about.
Okay, great. And who are you going to send that to, just so we know who to look for it? Will you send that to Mike or Janet?
Yeah, we communicate with Mike quite a bit, but we could send it to Mike and Janet as a starting point.
Does that sound
Is that-
appropriate, Jared? Yep, perfect. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
All right, thank you.
And we do meet down here twice a year, so Carmen will let you know when our next meeting is.
Sounds good.
Thanks,
Bye.
Tony. All righty, the next thing on what we wanted to share with you is I just wanted to go over ballot measures 1A and 1B, which we are not in this meeting either for or against. But I will tell you that they were both put on the ballot by unanimous votes of the commissioners. And there was a bill passed in the summer of 2024 called a state bill, Senate Bill 233, which did put a 5.25% cap on any taxing jurisdiction, the annual increase in any taxing jurisdictions, the funds that they could bring in, regardless of how their assessed value changed. So you may remember and heard for years about Tabor, that had put a 5.5% cap on all of those collections. Our region had voted individually on all the taxing districts to eliminate that limit. And so taxing jurisdictions were able to collect the full amount of revenues for the approved mill levies. And mill levies are the most confusing part of our job, but it's essentially the way the tax rate is set. And then you apply that to your valuation and the assessed proportion that you're allowed to tax, and you end up with what your tax is. So we now have a new 5.25% cap on all county funds, as well as all other taxing jurisdictions in the state. And so what the commissioners did was, what we have proposed is that on 3 of those funds, we are requesting voter approval to lift the 5.25% cap. And those are on the funds that we feel are the most critical in terms of serving the community. So one ballot measure is called 1A, and that supports our child care and community mental health funds. They currently have a 0.75 mill levy rate. Without this override that is being requested by ballot 1A, they would collect well less than, I think, less than 0.7 mils. Both funds are currently overstretched, which is why we're making this request. Child care funds have been pulled back at the state level, and we now have a waiting list for people who need support, and our mental health crisis continues to grow in the community. Jared did some number crunching for us, and for 1A, the total cost per $100,000 residential assessed value would be $1.19 per year, or for 2026. And for commercial properties, it would be $5.13 per $100,000 value. So that's 1A, and I'm happy to take any questions on that for the child care fund and the mental health fund together. 1B is for the road and bridge fund. And this one is a 2-part question, all in one ballot measure. The first part is, well, let me back up. Currently, the voters in San Miguel County have approved 0.5 mils for road and bridge construction and maintenance, and that has proved grossly inadequate over the years. So historically, the county has transferred an additional 1.4 mils to the Road and Bridge Fund for a total of 1.9. And what we are asking for is the voters' permission to just make that permanent, so that we can have sort of a more consistent, as opposed to a more consistent funding mechanism for the county up to 1.9 mils. That doesn't change anything. It just makes it more secure, if you will, towards road and bridge. We are also, this ballot measure 1B is also asking to lift that 5.25% cap on the 1.9 mils. And that would provide an extra $328,000 for road maintenance in 2026. It would cost a residence $1.49 per $100,000 and $6.45 for commercial. I will say that our biggest complaint as commissioners is roads. And that is all over the county, but particularly on the east end where traffic is so intense. And last year, or this calendar year, this budget year, the commissioners mid-year decided to allocate an additional $350,000 towards road maintenance. And that actually, I think someone else was going to talk about that. Anyway, we felt that even the 1.9 was inadequate. And so if you, the voters, permit the lifting of the 5.25% cap, we can collect that additional 350 from the voters and not have to take it out of the general fund. Again, the tax rates are not changing. It's just the lifting of that state mandated cap. And it's essentially reauthorizing the overrides that the voters had already made for all of these funds. So that's information about 1A and 1B. I'm happy to answer other questions or any questions. Lynn?
So does that mean that the general fund mill levy rate is gonna go down? by
Correct.
that amount?
Correct. So it's 11.6 or something, and it'll go down by 1.4. We're not asking for additional mill levies. We actually did consider asking for an additional bump in the road and bridge mill levy, but decided that that was too much to ask. So we took that off the table. Scott?
Is that an adequacy in budget, due to, this, like, the salary or the payment of current employees, or is that to try to expand
Right.
into new areas, roads, or where is that money going to go?
Yeah, that's a good question, Lance.
Scott, the answer is yes, and we are in a difficult position with staffing because the free market, and Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, but we can afford to pay $35 an hour, starting a little lower and bumping up a little higher over time, but call that an average number and benefits. But on the free market, if you were to go drive equipment up in the Mountain Village on a big project, you'd probably make twice that, maybe more. And unfortunately, that's a decision that many skilled laborers are deciding is bird in the hand. Let's take the money now and worry about the future later. So fewer folks are willing to commit to a career, if you will, with the county, even though there are obvious benefits to being on a plan for health insurance and so forth. The other difficulty, and again, Ryan, keep your ears open and tell me if I misspeak, is that the price of materials has gone up more than just inflation, but also just supply chains and life, and we've all seen it. But Ryan's being asked to manage a understaffed organization with the same amount of money and increased need. In other words, there's more and more cars traveling on all of our county roads, but particularly in the east end. And so what we've decided we can do for him, we're reluctant to ask for a raise in the mill levy, which would cost all of us more out of our taxes, but to simply set the bar where it's always been and not go to this state mandate that is lower, and give Ryan a little extra breathing room so that he can do everything you just said, pay his staff more, have a little more money for materials, and be able to give the service that we're getting requests for. Exactly where that's going to go, that's Ryan's business. I don't know. And I don't know that he would be able to tell you, even if you caught him outside the building tonight, where exactly the next hotspot will be. But I can tell you that we are making steps, and you probably have noticed the Trout Lake access, the entrance to the Ophir Valley, a couple really difficult, steep, tricky grades with lots of washboard or lots of dust that we've thrown money at just because we were getting so many complaints from both citizens and visitors that we had to do something. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and are there other areas specifically where you?
We've got a list.
Yeah, Ryan's going to talk about that in a minute. I will say that with the extra 350 that we allocated this summer, we did not expand our crew because we can't even fill it as it is. We hired contractors to do that work. And I think that is, at least in the nearer term, our plan is to use contractors. But Ryan can speak to that also when we get to that part. So Mark, do you have a question about the ballot measures?
Yes, because when Ryan speaks to it, could you tell us how many road miles you're responsible for and what your cost per mile is?
Sure, let's get to the, oh, well, that may roll into the ballot measure. Is that, go ahead, Ryan.
So I know that what we receive is about, from highway users tax and property tax, it was around $6,000 a mile, maybe every road. We have a little over 650 miles of road in the system. Now, roads that we have out around the west end, they have a different level of maintenance than the roads we have in Norwood or the east end. And so costs, I know the last time we did a cost study, we did a cost analysis on, and it took us about a month to figure out what we were spending. And this was just for winter maintenance. I know that Bolton Road came in, I think, was around $46,000 a mile for maintenance. That was just for winter maintenance. And then, when we were looking at doing, expanding winter service on what it would take. And back then, I think the recommendation at that time would be to increase by an additional 1.4 mils, just to expand winter maintenance at the time. You know, so, there's a lot of challenges. I would say it's difficult. And I'll be able to go into it more when we talk about what we did with, this season, to try to get caught up. But yeah, on average, I think it's easier to say, here's what we get of our users, and here's what we get is our funds to maintain each mile of road. Just my recollection is was around $6,000 per mile.
For 650 miles.
600 miles.
Yeah.
So some roads.
Math isn't wrong, and that's $3.6 million.
Yeah, that's roughly about what it is. So, and then, some roads cost us, maybe $50,000 a year to maintain, and some roads, we can look at the maintenance on, and we might spend $500 or $1,000 if it's once and just got to pass it. So there's a lot of factors.
Too long ago, when I was in the industry, we figured just to pave a road with a 3-inch surface was over $1 million a mile.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna have to move on. I just wanted to make sure you guys were aware of 1A and 1B and where they came from and why the commissioners felt that they needed to be on the ballot. We have now a staff update that would normally be conducted by Mike Bordonia. He's on vacation. It's his birthday today. And so Jared Biggs, our deputy county manager, will take you through those topics. And obviously, as we have with these, we'll take questions and comments.
The first item I had this evening was just a brief discussion. We've been maintaining a really good email list of Down Valley residents for quite some time, and that is thanks largely to the amazing efforts of Carmen Warfield. But we are working on amending that to we have a program on our website called Notify Me. Right now, you can sign up for that countywide, and we're talking about breaking that into smaller segments. That way, more germane information can be sent. Notification of this meeting can go to the Down Valley residents and not to Norwood or East End and those kind of things. So that's just something to be aware of and keep a lookout for. You will still be able to sign up for the countywide notices, but we're just kind of trying to segment that so we can target a little bit more effectively.
So Carmen will send out an email from her existing list at that time, and that will invite you all to sign up for the Notify Me function. Although, do you think that we could just convert the email list we have now over to Notify Me?
I would suggest that we send that email and
Yep.
give people the option, because
Okay.
we probably know we have a few people on that list who are no longer with.
We legally cannot, okay? So you're gonna have to sign up, but that gives you an opportunity to turn it on and off and to also select other notifications that you'd like to receive. And then it's not up to the goodwill of a county employee to keep a spreadsheet. You can also change your email address at any time. So that is in the works. Watch for an email.
Yes.
Oh, Harley.
If I may, you said residential, could you add commercial, that is particularly talking about Front Street, which is commercial?
I added you and your son on
You want me to decide?
It's not meant to be just for residential.
Yeah.
It's for anybody interested in
Anybody
Down
in
Valley
the region.
matters.
So we do want that to be anybody who's interested in getting information about the region, so. The next item is just a quick update on the Clear Networks fiber optic internet installation. On October 1st, the county signed an easement agreement with Clear Networks to allow them to use some of our parcels and some of our existing conduit for their efforts to bring that fiber down valley. I know they've sent a lot of notifications to various owners requesting easement access, and I think they're finalizing that right now and really looking at trying to get that fiber link hung on poles with Sampa in some areas, going through some of our properties, through some private property, and they're going to be working on that over the next year. Once that takes place, Clear Networks will be the ISP in the area, right? So they're the ones who will be able to light that fiber up, provide that locally to folks. So that'll be at the point, and I'm expecting that to be about 2027, when they will have that fiber working and be able to engage you all in, you might be able to cancel your DSL or whatever you have now and engage with Clear Networks in that kind of time frame. So.
Two questions, three questions.
Steve Keen?
Is it above and below ground installation?
I believe there is a mix. So they're doing some of it hanging on telephone poles, where Sampa has a good line. And then they are doing some conduit in some other areas that is being buried and trenched. So.
Mark?
Yes, are you working with San Miguel Power Association to get this done?
Clear Networks
Clear
is
Networks.
working with them.
Yeah.
They're working with them, because we
Yes.
buried a lot of conduit before.
Right.
Yep.
And we've been getting, a lot of old plans, CDOT plans, other groups' plans
That's
with a lot of that conduit location. And I know Clear Networks has been proofing a lot of that this year already.
The as-built weren't good, but it's there.
Did we think Lynn Black started this?
Yeah, Lynn. It's coming.
Yeah.
Scott, do you have a question about Clear Networks?
Price of that fiber helped lower because we allowed them to use existing infrastructure.
That's a good question. As I recall, Jared, do you know more about this? I feel like Mike did not talk about the price of that because it's a utility we want in the area, but we did get some free service for some of the county facilities. Do you know that?
We as a county, since we are also a customer of Clear Networks for a lot of things, we were able to trade some conduit use for, secure server access at the jail, those kind of things. So we have navigated some of those, but I don't know that we have any customer pricing agreements that are going to govern those prices.
Although I will note that by getting that better service and at a lower price, that hits all of our pockets and our service levels, okay?
So as they've been going through talking to individuals about easements on their own properties, there have been cases where they've offered a few months free. For what it's worth, I don't know what their exact monthly charge is, how much does it cost right now in Norwood or in Telluride? But you can probably expect roughly the same thing.
But I'm assuming there's no sorts of ability for them to kind of monopolize the valley and simply be the only fiber provider. They're just really competing with wireless and Starlink, basically.
I think that is pretty much the ticket to start is, that is the competition, is the fiber link, the Starlink, and the existing DSL connections.
But there
right?
was a competitive process for Clear Networks to get that contract. Is that not correct?
No, they're investing the dollars to make that move.
They're in competition with
Yeah.
satellites and everything.
Okay, but was it, okay, but they were like awarded the right to do that by somebody, weren't they, at the state level?
No.
No, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, thank you, Lynn. Yeah.
So Clear Networks has been getting a series of grants to the state.
Right.
And that's the
That's what
portion
I'm
that's
thinking.
being matched, or being used to put us together.
To leverage this.
Part of those grants required, and, I don't know if I can recall it, but close to urban rates. So whatever Denver's paying, they're trying to expand that throughout the state, even though in rural areas, that's gonna be very difficult. However, the offset is the state grant money to help implement the project. Region 10 many years ago did go out to bid. And it was Clear Networks that won a major portion of the Region 10 network. He also assisted us in the provision, gaining the easements across the mesas to hook into Telluride. And from there, just shooting down Valley. Hopefully using existing, if not, it's more expensive if you can't use existing structures or conduit with it. So, it's coming, thank God, because there is no GSL through CenturyLink down Valley. CenturyLink sent us a notice.
That's right. That's
2 or 3
right.
Years ago saying, we're not gonna, if it breaks, you're out of luck. And I was getting basically dial up rates, our speed. So it's either wireless or Starlink at this point. There is an LTE network that I have been using. It's called HomeFi, works off cell towers. You can only get about 5 megs max on it, but it's better than nothing at this point.
I can't believe we're still having this conversation.
I know.
2025. Carry on, Jared.
There was just a discussion, as you all know, everybody's received ballots in the mail as of this point. And turning in those ballots is still, for Placerville residents, a exercise of bringing that to Norwood or Telluride or putting it in the mail. There were some conversations at our last meeting about, could we get a Dropbox? And I also got some email correspondence about that, because we used to have a Dropbox before we had some additional state mandates for security for elections. We have recently, as a county, subscribed to pretty much satellite internet here. Thus, we can actually Zoom these meetings now, right? So we are continuing to work on our options for that. But I wanted to at least convey where we're at right now is we do not have a Dropbox location. We have to get that approved by the Secretary of State again. And we're gonna just keep working on that now that we have more secure internet, so.
And is that related to security measures for the ballot box?
The ballot box has to have 24-hour continuous monitoring.
Right.
And it has to be recorded. It has to be monitored. We have to do pickups twice a day. So there is a staff component of that will happen as well. But I wanted to just update everyone that we heard everybody, and you don't see one here, and I wanted to speak to that because it has been a question previously.
And we're working on it, but I don't want to suggest that it's a promise, because if there will be cost considerations and also staffing. As Jared said, there's statutes about how frequently that needs to be picked up, and it may not be possible or the highest and best use of county funds. But it's something we are looking into now that we do have good internet service here. Yes, Scott.
I missed the part. Would that be here at the schoolhouse building, or is that somewhere else in the Placerville corridor? Like, where do you guys look? I mean, potentially.
I think we had envisioned it here. I don't know where it was previously. Yeah, but we envision it here because it is county property, so it makes it a little easier that way than trying to get another spot for it. So.
Yes, Jeannie.
Just FYI, the US Postal Service is only doing 1 pickup now, no longer 2 pickups. So if you're gonna send your ballot in, I'm thinking that the pickup's gonna be at 3:30 in the afternoon. That's not happening. It's only at 7 a.m. So you gotta make sure that you get your ballot in the USPS box in time for it to go to Grand Junction.
And come back, exactly.
And
And
we're saving money only doing 1 pickup Okay, yeah.
And Jared, I believe you told me earlier today that you can mail your ballot without a stamp. I'm not recommending it, but can you speak to that?
So I did have a conversation with the clerk and recorder, Michael Wazinski, and he did mention if there is an unstamped ballot that ends up being returned to sender, the county is the sender of that ballot. And so there is kind of a workaround to this. But as Commissioner Brown mentioned, it's not necessarily advisable to save the 72 cents or so. If you want to make sure it gets there, I would stamp it. We're just looking at all the opportunities to make sure that people can get their ballots in.
Okay, we are moving on now to the road and bridge update. Ryan.
So you guys know we finished all the work at Placerville, the chip seal. Restriped that area in front of the market, so hopefully that's all make a difference, and it's all, working. I know it works at times, sometimes it's worked for. There's gonna be periods where people, they do what they want, but again, that's kind of an enforcement issue. But at least everything's there. We, even with the recent rain, with the monitoring, I know you guys, I don't know if anybody's looked over there, surprised where we just kind of change that channel, try to slow that water down, give that debris somewhere to kind of settle out before it just comes down in one big field. Yeah, so ever since we've done that, after the rain, I've been going up there and looking at it, and it hasn't made it too far past the waterfall since, so it hasn't even really challenged that system to see how effective it's going to be. So we're still monitoring that, but just so you guys know that, yeah, just do it and walk away. We're still continuing to look after that. There's the, so one thing, this is what this kind of ties into what Commissioner Brown was saying. So we did, over the years, we've had limited staffing, and it's been a challenge for us to get material that we have crushed in our pits out on the roads, and we just haven't had the manpower, we haven't had the resources to keep up with the deterioration of the roads. So we sat down and developed a plan, and we started that plan this year. That plan, it costs on an average of $300,000 a year. As what that plan is, we're hiring contractors to assist us to, work either inside our crews or additionally with our crews, even separately from our crews, but just to help us get caught up and get gravel on some of the roads that has deteriorated the most, And so with this year, we did 56 feet, and we did, or 57 feet and 60 M. We were able to do those. Our crews did Elk Creek going up to Wilson Mesa. But we went through all the gravel that we have. We actually, in order to finish off what we did, we actually bought additional gravel from the vendor. And
Ryan, would you mind using the common names of the roads as well, please?
So Fall Creek and so.
Great, thanks.
We did Fall Creek and so.
Are you putting down any textile?
We did, we sprayed it on there after. It's not as heavy as.
No, underneath the ground.
Oh, no textile. That surface was scarifying, it was rough, and then.
Because anytime I've ever put down without textile, it just sinks in and continues to sink.
It's gonna, I think that a lot of the issues on our roads is just more in the winter time and the spring melt, that's when we lose some joy in the trail we have.
The shells and the mangrove shell and
Yeah. And so we know that it's deteriorating at a quick rate, quicker than what we can keep up. So this plan, and it's about $300,000 a year on average. Some years it's a little less, some years it's more, but on average, that's what it costs. So if we did receive any extra money, that's kind of, that's where that money goes, to kind of help us get caught up on that. Yeah, we'll just stay caught up. So moving forward, if we can continue this plan in 2026, we're looking at spending $292,000 on 56 feet, and replacing the gravel from there up to 58 feet. So the full length of that road.
And that road is?
And that road is was that
Safety.
Well, it's, no, it goes from 18th Mesa down to Highway 62. So
Or the last
Alder.
Or the last dollar.
Alder Creek.
Is it the Tyride Pines Road or the Last Dollar Road?
Well, Telluride Pride is the private part.
Okay,
Yeah, our road, it actually continues off and 56B goes up to the, up to 58B. But that's the portion of it, it would replace gravel on the entire road. And then 58P from 56B to, this is Great Ranch, that section there, that is, on Last Dollar Road. That would be in 2027, and that's about $272,000. And then in 2028, we would do 60X, 59Z, and Z60, which is up on, yeah, but on the east side of Brown Ranch, it's going in like the Dave Wood Road, they call it. And so then those will all get new gravel. In 2029, we took the 6L, and that's about, and then 60X, 59Z, and Z60 is about 290,000 of those. And in 2029 would be 314,000 for 56. So that kind of gives you guys an idea, at least the next 4 years in our plan, where if we didn't get any additional money, just give us the ability to get caught up on those. Now, we're still going to be crushing gravel. Our gravel pit in the east end has a shelf life. And whether, and it's quickly coming. Next year is going to be the last year that we're going to be able to crush there. It will be, turned into housing. Even if it wasn't turned into housing, we probably wouldn't get more than 2 or 3 out of it anyway. So there's a sunset date within the next few years anyways with that.
And where's that?
Lewis, yeah.
Pathfinder.
By Pathfinder, it's up by between Trout Lake and Hofer.
Okay.
We have a gravel pit there. Then we have a gravel pit at Morewood that we can also haul out for this area as well. M44, we do have 44. This year, we had our West End crews come over and continue to do that 2 miles that we had. And we pulled all that material out of the Morewood pit. And so that was all redone, and we were able to get the dust control treatment on top of that after that was completed. And so as far as other projects, we're just continuing on. I know that we talked about doing some culvert maintenance for foresters. I know 57 PF above, we're going to have an increase. There's some other culverts that we're looking at replacing, some larger ones that are at the end of their life and failing. So we don't think it will be coming up in future years. Yeah, the gravel projects, probably the one you guys can see, moving forward as far as like the biggest impact that you guys see.
What's your gravel for?
you know what?
You won't let me ask that, will you?
Why don't you have a chat with Ryan about some of your specific fun questions, but I just want to give the community here now an opportunity to ask anything of Ryan or make comments. Lynn Black.
Snow plowing change?
No, actually, so we have actually recently been able to add more people to the East End crew. So I would say that you guys are probably going to see an increase in the response time and in the level of services this coming month. We were able to fill up that crew. We just recently did the last opening that we had. We're working the background check, our background on the guy right now. All of them will have commercial licenses, with the exception of 2 that we just hired, but they're in the process of doing the testing now. So for the full staff, there's 8 total now on the East End, with the supervisor and with the operators. A senior operator, we're having operators in total. So you guys will see more people out on the roads this winter. Give them a place to live then.
For a little levity. All right, anything else for Ryan?
If not, can we give Ryan a round of applause? He's been doing.
I will mention, just for some levity, Ryan is helping me with a project with the different school districts in the county. K through 6th grade kids right now are filling out cards to name the snowplows. So each school will have a winning name and get their name decaled on a snowplow. So it'll be great fun.
I spoke with Madison over at Coach's Hall today, and yeah, we're coordinating here now. Picking the location, the location, and put up right on the hood, but it'll be a decal that goes on the plow, so it'll stay on the.
Excellent. Really important things.
Yeah, we're doing pretty well on schedule here. We've got about another half hour, although we did start a little bit late, but let's just keep moving. Thank you so much, Ryan. Next up, we have Janet Casp, your neighbor, with Parks and Open Space.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Excuse me. Yeah, just looking at my list here, some of these items we've already addressed. When it comes to the Down Valley Connector Trail, you know, Tim and Tony had kind of alluded to the fact that, you know, there is some.
We all free?
Sorry. Can
Okay,
you
we
hear me?
lost for a sec.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
We got you now.
Oh, okay, sorry. Anyway, yeah, some of the items on my list, we've already touched upon a couple of them. When it comes to the Down Valley Connector Trail, Tim and Tony from CDOT kind of alluded to the fact just as far as some reduced funding down the road, because one thing that Tony mentioned is the Down Valley Connector Trail project was initially identified as actually a priority trail project for the GVTPR, that stands for the Gunnison Valley Transportation Planning Region. But what they do is CDOT has this 10-year progress, which they go through. So for instance, they were putting projects into their next priority list, their 10-year plan from 2026 to 2036. So whereas we were initially highlighted as project number 4, high priority listing, we were still competing with the projects that were left over from the previous 10-year plan. And not only Region 5, which had a total of 10 new projects, but Region 3, which had a total of 8 new projects. So long story short, the next 10-year plan for CDOT ranges from 2026 to 2036. They're going to be looking to secure funding for various trail projects. But unfortunately, the fact that they had to carry over projects from their previous 10-year plan, we have been bumped back to maybe the next 10-year plan. So, you know, this is something that, you know, we've discussed with the community before multiple times. You know, the feasibility study was done. We've been looking at the engineering and design. That would be the next steps for segments 1 and 5. There are potentially some other grant dollars out there that I will be pursuing. But, you know, it is a challenge because some federal money that was initially going to be made available is now being held up for various reasons. So, you know, the project is out there very much. You know, I understand the community, I hear the community. And as a community member myself, this is something that, you know, it'd be great to see it happen. So, you know, additional funding will be pursued, but it's just something that is going to probably take longer than initially anticipated, which, you know, is unfortunate. You know, we did talk about the Front Street area beautification with CDOT. Again, that breaks out with the right-of-way ownership between the county, RGS, CDOT, the Placerville Trust. Again, as I mentioned earlier, this is a larger conversation that we need to have once the county manager, Mike Bordogna, returns, because and again, just taking into consideration what CDOT's ultimate long-term plans are with that CDOT right-of-way. And, you know, but it was hopeful to hear, though, that Tony and Tim are still pursuing the various projects on their end, in addition to what we were proposing with beautification and flower boxes, et cetera. You know, that they are going to pursue the sidewalks, the curb cuts, et cetera, that we had discussed with them this past summer. And yes, we will obviously engage with the community. So I will keep everybody in the loop as soon as plans are actually presented to the county, and we will share those with you. Next on my list is the cemetery, the Placerville, the historic cemetery.
Oh, Janet,
Oh,
sorry.
sorry. Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Are people raising their hands with questions? I can't see anybody other than the 4 of you.
If she's.
No, if it's about this, is it about the beautification?
It's about the other one.
Oh, okay, we'll come back to that. Great, thank you. Yeah, cemetery maintenance?
Yes, so the County Parks and Open Space Department provides maintenance at the cemetery. You know, one thing I discussed at a previous meeting with the community was that we were having signage prepared. And so it'll be something similar to what they have up in Telluride with the Lone Tree Cemetery. And I was working with a couple of contractors who unfortunately fell through, but I am working with a new steel welder in Uray who is more local, and he is putting together some designs for me and us to consider, which I will discuss with the County Historical Commission. So we're still hoping to get that done before the end of the year. I emailed him today just to get an update on timing. He hasn't responded as of yet, but this is definitely still happening. So we're working on that. And
Before you
then-
move on, was there any questions or thoughts about the cemetery? Jeannie Stewart?
So, Janet, this, metal structure, is it just information about the cemetery, or what is the metal structure going to, what's its purpose?
Oh, sorry. No, so Jeannie, yeah, the one thing, like I said, you know, we're looking to do something in line with what is up in Telluride at the historic Lone Tree Cemetery. So we want to give it some more of a, you know, just a more designated acknowledgement to the cemetery itself. You know, so it'd be sort of like the curved, and I can share, I don't have anything on me at the moment, but I can share some, you know, renderings with you, et cetera, you know, with the community.
Is it a sign that says this is the Placerville Cemetery, or is it?
It'll say Historic Placerville Cemetery.
Okay, and it will be, are you thinking it'll be like an arch? I can't.
Yes, it'll be an arch similar to what is at Lone Tree up in town.
Okay, and is there a question about or a thought about that? Is that what the community is interested in?
I mean, that's what I had discussed with the community at the previous meeting. And again, it's just an acknowledgement of the, you know, out of respect for the people who are buried in the cemetery.
Jeannie, did you have a thought on that?
Oh, this is just the first time I ever heard it, so I might have missed that meeting when you discussed the cemetery. I'm just.
Janet, I don't see any opposition.
Okay, that's good. Hold on one second.
Okay.
How to unlock a door. Yes, and then with the shooting range, because that was something we discussed at a previous meeting as well. The shooting range location, and I'd requested an update from Dan Van Horn of the BLM office, but they are, due to the government closure and shutdown, they are not working right now. But the last time we corresponded with each other, he had said that they stopped at 2 BLM parcels to assess as potential shooting ranges. One was up on Wrights Mesa, north of Norwood, within Montrose County. Another at Round Top, immediately west of Ridgeway, within Uray County. He said that he thought both would serve well as developed shooting ranges, but his immediate hesitation was that both are quite some distance from recreational users in Telluride, Sawpit, and Placerville. So he said he was going to keep working on it. I haven't heard from him since. That was back in March. Again, I sent him an email, left him a phone message, but again, due to the government closure, most likely he isn't working.
Okay, any questions about the shooting range? If not, we did have a question about the Down Valley Connector Trail, which I missed.
Yes.
Scott?
Obviously, money is nice to have because it can open a lot of doors, but would it be helpful, especially if we're talking about a 20-year project potentially now, would it be helpful to have maybe a mission that could help break out each one of these tasks that would otherwise cost money and see if there's alternative ways, donations, materials, time, labor, design, help It would cut down on the cost and potentially keep the project moving until we can find funding that would make up the rest, instead of just waiting for a big chunk of federal money.
Did you hear that, Janet?
Yeah, I did. No, thanks, Scott. I appreciate that. Yeah, the next phase for this project is actually the engineering and design. So there's a lot of technical aspects and components to this. And a lot of, it's more just that criteria that's needed. And unfortunately, with some other grants that I did pursue early on, it's expensive. The engineering and design of these two segments, I mean, we're talking could be $900,000. I mean, I know that sounds ridiculous, but when you break out the actual cost of the feasibility study for this 3-mile stretch of trail, and then looking at each component, and we would just be addressing segments 1 and 5, the 2 bookends. It adds up. But it was hopeful news when CDOT prioritized our trail project. But then again, like I mentioned, we're now in competition with other projects and projects that have carried over from previous years. So it's a true fight for funding, but there are other grant dollars out there that I will be seeking and pursuing.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, Jen, is would it be helpful if we would have a commission, and maybe on that commission, there were some designers and engineers that were able to help subsidize the cost of these designs to help lower the fiscal responsibility of it and keep the project moving, instead of just looking for money to pay outside developers? Could we try to maybe put something together to help put these small pieces and parts together and keep the project moving?
Sure. Yeah, Scott, I'll follow. I'm sorry to hear you better. I keep getting closer and you see more of my head. Scott, how about I follow up with you after the meeting and let's chat and let's, hash out some ideas, because yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I'd love to get this, going sooner than later. But again, it's just also being realistic with whatever grant dollars might be out there. But, I'd love to hear your ideas and your thoughts. So I'll definitely follow up with you.
My gut tells me it's going to be hard to get a volunteer commission that could execute a project of that scale. Not to throw a wet towel on it, but
without trying, it's hard to know. But our alternative is just to sit and wait. That doesn't move the project forward.
Scott, I think you heard a willingness from Janet to sit with you and try to brainstorm creative ways to find what sounds like some very technical next steps. And if you've got some rabbits up your sleeve, I think that we'd all be delighted to keep this moving forward. So.
Yeah, no, it will be a challenge, but I'm willing to hear your ideas, Scott, so we can definitely meet up.
Thanks, Jen.
Yeah, no, thank you. And as far as I know, that's it for my list.
Anything else that the public would like to discuss with Parks and Open Space? We've got her right there.
So,
Andrew Dolise.
I have a question we talked about earlier about the beautification of Front Street project and those funds maybe being put on hold because of the governmental freeze and everything else that's going on. Can you give us an update on what's happening with the beautification of Front Street's plan?
Well, I think more so, like Tony and Tim from CDOT alluded to, it's not, as far as funding, so to speak, I think it's more of us just working out the right of way, the ownership, and then also, they also mentioned that, they have their funding secured for the improvements that they plan to make, with the curbs and the sidewalks, et cetera. So, like I mentioned earlier, I think the two projects will dovetail nicely together, from beautification to safety. And, and again, with beautification, I was looking at planter boxes and, and just a better delineation of traffic flow, et cetera. And CDOT was definitely open to that. They were very supportive of our plans. They shared them with their planning and design team. It was more adhering to their restrictions as far as what the planter boxes would have to be made of, how they would have to be constructed, and then obviously the locations. so that they would be conducive to traffic flow. So, I'm still very much open and positive, or hopeful that this can happen. So I don't really see a holdup on their end, because I think it'll be a good project between the county and CDOT, and they've been supportive of what we've recommended and suggested.
So it sounds like it's on us to decide whether we'd like to take over those rights of way. And that's a bigger discussion that we will agendize for soon, right?
Yeah, and there's also, CDOT has mentioned, because the county would actually have to purchase those rights. So whereas they mentioned, they would offer them to us at less than fair market value. Again, this was an email thread as recent as last week. So there's still a lot to be determined and more questions and answers.
I thought he said they would just quit claim those to us. Does that mean money's involved?
Well, initially the email thread had him mentioning, he did mention that tonight, but the email thread says something different. So that would all need to be worked out.
Okay, okay. Great. And I think we've discussed in the past that there's probably money in the Parks and Open Space budget already that could cover the beautification plan. Is that right? Or do we need funding for that?
Yeah, no, again, yes, Commissioner Brown, because we were looking at to start with, simple flower boxes, simple, let's just spruce it up a little bit. And, we wouldn't do the full-blown plans that had been proposed by AIRS, our EPA consultants, at least not yet, because again, there's a bigger picture there. And CDOT would obviously be more of a player as far as what we could introduce, because those plans are more involved, and they included potentially closing off a curb cut.
Okay, anything else for Parks and Open Space? Oof, okay, planning.
Thank you.
Thank you, Janet.
Thanks.
Appreciate you zooming in.
No worries. Thank you.
So yeah, on the planning side, we've had a lot of discussions over the last several years about a download master plan. It's still on our schedule. We're working on some other things first, and our target is to start that late, fall, winter of next year. Between now and then, we'll be working on looking for planning grant funds. And then we need to secure a consultant, which is a process to do that. And getting everybody on board and started. As we've talked about, this will be a plan that has the all the usual stuff of a comprehensive plan or a master plan, and that land use, housing, transportation, natural resources, recreation, so on and so forth. But it will have a fairly robust, we expect, infrastructure element, which will be about water, wastewater, and such. So it's on the schedule. That's our next big project, unless this body changes my list. So late 2026 will be when we start kicking it off, and there'll be a lot of community meetings as we get into that. Probably some sort of steering committee, so on and so forth. So that's the master plan, and then current thing that we have going on right now, and somebody did participate when we did our we're in the midst of a housing code update. We're looking at our entire land use code for the entire county to see where we can remove barriers to the creation of housing. And we did have one of our community meetings here in Placerville, and I think we had about 15 people. So yay, you guys won, by the way. You had the best turnout. Ofer came in second at 8. So working our way through that, there's gonna be a lot more opportunities to participate in that. We've got our online portal, if anybody wants to have a one-on-one sit down with us or so, we're more than happy to do that. Just talk about ideas and thoughts. So and then you continue on for natural resources, doesn't affect this area quite as much. But we're getting close on mining, and then we also have logging, oil and gas and shale. So those are our big things that we've got going on.
Thanks, Kay. I also just wanted to mention that there is currently a vacancy on the County Planning Commission, be an alternate seat. So if any of you or any of your friends or neighbors, might be interested in that, it's a really great commission to sit on, and you'll have input and influence on all of these projects Kay is talking about, as well as land use code, updates and more. So
That's how Galena got her start.
that's right. My start.
And also we have two, if you want to be involved, but not as much of a time commitment, we do have 2 vacancies on our board of adjustments, which, basically they hear variances, we meet maybe once or twice a year. So, if you're interested, that will be people there too.
Scott?
I think in the last meeting, Mike was talking about potentially looking into, some way of collecting data on what's needed in the valley and what's needed in this plan. And I know that there was some push to start collecting that once the process starts, but, was there any hope that we might be able to have some sorts of surveys that start sooner or later when we're talking about all of these projects that, will affect this? Why could we start collecting data as soon as possible?
So it'll be important. Usually when we do any sort of plan like this, the first part of it is the information gathering. And it's really important to have our consultants, people who are helping with us, in on that. And a lot of times they have a lot better tools and resources than we do. We've done a number of surveys for this community in the last 6 years. So we definitely have that information. But just with everything else we've got going on, and I don't want to get so far up in front that sweeping our consultants with something.
So are you planning on having some surveys?
Yeah,
With the consultants?
Yeah, when we do plans, there's always, surveys are one component, community meetings. We use every possible way to gather information. We don't do just a one.
Kay, I do have a question about when that time comes. Will there be, similar to the East End Master Plan, some sort of citizen advisory group?
I fully expect there to be that.
Yeah, so that would be even a kind of deeper dive into the process and an opportunity for residents to be really hands-on with guiding the master plan update.
Any other planning comments or questions? Whew, okay, well, that brings us to the end of the topics that we had previously discussed with you and wanted to kind of reconsider together. But we have some time now. I don't know, well, we have 5 minutes to the end of our official meeting. We could certainly go a few minutes over since we started a few minutes late, but this is kind of your chance to bring up different topics or further comment on, Jared.
I did want to mention, I think we are backstopped.
Oh, yes.
So that.
There's another event in here. We do need to leave at 6:15 ish. They'll be here at 6:30, so we need to be cleaned up by 6:30. But anyway, please, have at us with those, what did I say? Complaints and compliments. And considerations. Yes, Scott.
The property assessment taxes going up in the county. I know that it's a very, very complicated issue, but talking to a lot of people, it really feels like it's kind of forcing people who have bought into a certain income level and a certain lifestyle, and it's in a way a slow push out of the community. People with fixed incomes, they're not getting that money out of their house. So why was that raised so significantly and not put into when homes are sold at a certain price, that assessment price then it becomes the taxable price instead of, yeah.
I think what you're talking about, Scott, is something in California that they did enact called Proposition 19. Farrell and I were talking about it earlier. And the rough concept is that your taxes stay at whatever price it was that you purchased the property until you sell it. And then the new owner pays whatever the new price is and the taxes adjust. I'm going to defer to Jared, who has a much firmer grasp on the relationship between state and county abilities to assess taxes. 'Cause I don't know if we could create a San Miguel County-wide Proposition 19, or if we would have to go to the state. And as you know, it's a California Proposition 19, not a LA County Proposition 19. So Jared, do you know off the top of your head how that works? I just want to do a couple quick things. It's Prop 13. Thank you. Just FYI, if you're going searching on the Google, California Prop 13. And to Lance's point, our tax assessment structure in the state of Colorado is a state level structure. We don't have the ability as a county to opt out of that methodology. We're pretty constrained, and that's where the assessor's office, and I know it is a kind of sore point, because you want to live in your home and you see that value increase, and that might feel good, and it might get you out of PMI insurance and a few things like that if you're in those kind of scenarios. But at the same time, it cuts with growing tax, tax burdens, so on and so forth. So it is a conundrum that I think the state is considering how to kind of blunt this in some way. And I think one of the other challenges is the way that a lot of communities actually have been blunted in this assessment cycle, because we as a county have continued to be pretty fortunate to see our appraisals go up. There are some counties in the state that are starting to see their appraisals go flat or even decline in a minor amount. And so that's ultimately the kind of one of the answers is for market corrections to happen. But I do think there are going to be actions at the state level, because a lot of people are feeling this. And, I think that as Commissioner Brown had mentioned, the 5.25% limit that was applied by the state legislature last year, and it goes into effect next year, was one of the tactics the state took to say, we aren't going to solve the assessment problem. We're just going to cap taxes and how much taxes can go up in a certain way. And, again, for us, we're as a county planning on living with that with most of our funds, but we're asking for some exemptions on some others to see how it goes. So I know that's a nothing burger of an answer, but I hope it helps them understand.
One other thing, though, the place that we as citizens do, or property owners do have leverage, is at the ballot box. And that's where we can make choices about increased mill levy rates and that override that I spoke about in 1A and 1B. And historically, in particular, the east end of the county has been quite generous with voting in increases in mill levies. And at the same time that we had these two jumps in assessed values, 23 and 25, we had really significant mill levy increases by the Tyrod Regional Medical Center, the Tyrod School District, and the fire department. And so that has all created kind of this perfect storm of ouch, I can't afford this. It's hard. Lynn?
So the other thing that's I have been hearing about and witnessed and have felt is the homeowners insurance issue.
Yeah.
And it's turning into a bigger issue than I've ever seen. Mine went up double last year, and this year it's up another 50%. I think a lot of it is because of wildfire mitigation. Does the Western Region Wildfire Council still have grants or things available that assist with that?
I can speak to some of that then. Yes, West Region Wildfire Council is still functional. They had a change at the executive director level about 3 months ago. So they've set a new ED in place, and he's getting his feet back underneath him, but the baseline operation is continuing.
unfortunately, insurance companies aren't all recognizing across the board whether or not you've done the mitigation. It's slowly coming, and the state insurance commissioner is working to try to put some legislation together for the coming session that would level that playing field, so that if you have a fire hardened home and you've done the mitigation work around your property, the insurance companies that operate in Colorado are required to recognize that with a reduction in rates. What I've also learned in the state of Colorado is that the insurance companies bundle fire risk with hail risk, and that over 50% of the money they pay out is due to hail. And so the insurance commissioner is also trying to get them to separate those two disasters, if you will, and have the wildfire risk people paying for their risk and the hail people paying for their risk. From an insurance company perspective, it's better to put all that in the same pot than it is to start separating out your funds. So it's a snarled dogfight. There is a really smart insurance commissioner, and I've had the fortune to speak with him a couple times one-on-one, and he is trying as hard as he can to come up with some answers that will work for both our state and for our kind of various regions within the state, if you will. But it's slow sledding. It's a big rock and a big rock.
Does he have any control over whether or not insurance companies pull out of the state?
No, on private businesses.
That's happening too.
Yes, it is. And you're not alone in your concerns, and you're not alone in putting pressure on us to try to fix it. We are not able to create a San Miguel County insurance program, but we are able to continue to push our state representatives to try to negotiate with these pilots.
The other piece that is being worked on at the state level, and sorry, I can't remember right now if it's currently in place at some level, but is a reinsurance program where the state agrees to cover the first $1 billion or so, whatever the number is, of a disaster, and that should lower our rates, because it's sort of like raising your deductible, if you will. So the state, I agree with Lance, the state insurance commissioner is really working hard, and I will say the counties are working on it as well, and really leaning into pushing the state legislature to address this, because it's a huge problem everywhere in the county. Everywhere, yeah.
Commissioner Brown, I just wanted to mention regrettably, this is a slow machine, the insurance industry. And we are seeing people who are losing insurance altogether and cannot get coverage. And the state did 2 years ago enact a program where if you show that you cannot get coverage for some reason, right? And you do have to collect some letters, you have to do a little bit of work to do this, but you can get into, it's called the Colorado Fair Plan program. Which is kind of an insurer of last resort program if you are in the unenviable position of being dropped and not being able to find additional insurance coverage. So it's really cold comfort, right? Because it just means that insurance as a business is not working here anymore. And so then government is backstopping those businesses to make sure that we can still have lending, we can still have insurance, and we can still, kind of live our daily lives.
Thank you, Jared. What else is on your minds? Whoa.
We don't want to end on that pessimism.
I'll bring up just one kind of interesting thing I recently learned, that is, this concept is in its infancy right now, but there's in Park City, Utah, the Park City Community Foundation is kind of entertaining the idea of a community insurance pool to create basically an internal insurance fund for the community. And it's twofold. One, the idea is that whoever buys into this insurance pool, that it would guarantee that the money invested by the insurance companies go towards climate action and more kind of environmentally friendly investments. And secondarily, that they can map insurance gaps in their region and make sure that businesses and homeowners have the option to buy into this insurance pool. This has not been initiated yet. It's just a concept that is being entertained. But I think more and more mountain communities and communities that have a lot of residents in the WUI, wildfire urban interface, are looking into, because it's become a widespread problem throughout the West. California there's just entire portions of the map where people cannot get insurance. They've been dropped and there's just no insurance companies that will cover them. So this is kind of this new era of trying to figure out how to cover these insurance gaps, and the concept coming from community foundations to create a pool of money to invest and make sure that their communities are covered. So maybe this will be the next chapter to help navigate this.
One thing that we could look into with that idea is with the fire department. I was told my insurance tripled in the last year. And I was told that even though I live less than 1/10 of a mile away from a fire station, because it is not a manned 24-hour-a-day fire station, that was part of the reason why the insurance went up so much. That if all of our fire stations were manned, then we could see a reduction in rates.
There are communities that are banding together to pay to man fire stations and taxing themselves. I set up a special district to do just that. That's a conversation with John Bennett to see what he can do for us. And I'm sure he's got answers.
Oh, yeah, he does.
Scott?
Yeah, I mean, piggyback on that same idea, and I think that that's a great point, that if we could have those conversations, and that would help a lot of people, then we should definitely have those conversations. On top of it, I mean, opening up a little bit of the can of worms, but you know, in other areas, like being close to a fire hydrant is like mitigates. We are in a very small valley with a river. I'm sure there are things that limit like what we can take from the river and consider that kind of a source of water for fire. But if there's anything on the state level that you guys can do to advocate for loosening restrictions on the fire department being able to use river water in cases of fire in residential areas, that would help the insurance companies see the river as a potential source, like it was a fire hydrant, that could help.
That's a good point. Okay.
Thank you, town commissioners and town staff, for all your hard work. We appreciate having you come down and giving us a lot of information about our community down here in Fosterville and Mesa. So thank you for all your hard work.
You're here.
Thanks, Stevie. You're a good egg. Thank you.
It's so rare to hear applause at the end of the meeting.
Land Black, I just want to say you still got it. I don't, you can rip on anything.
They set up programs in the 70s.
I think we need to adjourn the meeting. Excuse me 1 second. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
How do you vote?
Aye.
Aye. Aye as well. The meeting is adjourned.